Michigan and Washington in the national championship. This is an exciting matchup. We talk about styles make fight. These are two contrasting styles. Alex, how are you feeling? What are we, 3 or 4 days away from the national championship? Who do you give the edge in this matchup? I think it's about a 5 point line. Who do you like going into Monday?
Can't really get a read on it because, like I think 5 points is too much because I think Washington's offense is so prolific. They can score on anyone. In today's day and age of high scoring affairs across the NFL and college football, good offense always beats good defense. But with that being said, we just watch an Alabama offensive line get absolutely picked apart by that Michigan pass rush. Now, with that being said, Michael Penix didn't have a clean pocket against Texas, where the strength of that defense was along the line of scrimmage. So, with that being said, Michael Penix proved against Texas that he can handle the pressure and he can still get the job done. I still think 5 points is too much. If I was a gambling man, which I am, I think I'm going to be on the Wolfpack or the Huskies. Sorry, excuse me. And so I think if I was leaning one way, I would go with the Huskies because it feels like it's going to be a one-score game either way. And I don't feel great about J.J. McCarthy. I know he did it against Bama. He took them all the way down the field and tied the game. I just don't feel as good about J.J. McCarthy leading a game-winning touchdown drive as I do Michael Penix. And that's not groundbreaking analysis.
Yeah, well, this purple is for the Huskies. It's not for LSU. It's usually for LSU, but for this week, it is for the Huskies. I keep waiting for this Cinderella run to just come crashing down. We thought it was going to happen maybe against Oregon State or Washington State. They get upset somewhere around there. Everyone thought it was going to happen against Oregon. They thought they were going to get boat raced in that game. A lot of people were picking Texas. We both picked Texas. We picked them in a close game, and it came down to the wire as we expected. Of course, Washington came out on top. Michigan, to me, it's an interesting style matchup because you do have that defensive line that had so much success against the Alabama offensive line. But Alabama's offensive line, they were dealing with some injuries. The low snaps played a factor. Jalen Milroe, not necessarily a guy. He's known for holding the ball a little bit too long, so it's not really his forte to get the ball out quick and on time to his receivers like someone like Michael Penix is. But I think the key to the game is very obvious to me. Can you protect Michael Penix? Because the Longhorn corners, not very good, not nearly on the same level as the Michigan corners. But in the same breath, nobody in this country, it doesn't matter how good your corners are, they're going to be NFL secondaries if they were playing that would have trouble with these Washington wide receivers. Nobody's guarding those trio of wide receivers. So if you give them time with a guy like Michael Penix behind there who shows he's got the cojones, man. Like, he is not scared of anything. He is not going to blink. He has shown that time and time again in the face of adversity. I think they've been underdogs in 4 or 5 games this season. Hasn't mattered. So if you can give him time with those wide receivers, I don't care how good Michigan's secondary is, they are going to give up points, and they're going to give up points in bunches. But in the same breath, I really do think this is a matchup where Michigan's defensive line can go in there and attack Michael Penix because he will put the ball in harm's way. We did not see that against Texas, but if you have watched Michael Penix this entire season, he has 9 interceptions. He could have had a lot more. I remember the Washington State game. He threw 2 balls late in that game when they were behind. They didn't trust their kicker, so they were going for the end zone instead of just trusting their kicker. They ended up having to because they took a sack. But he threw 2 balls that were just so bad and should have been picked and should have dashed Washington's playoff chances right there. So he will put the ball in harm's way. And Michigan, if they can start getting pressure on him, and you saw what happened to Jalen Milroe when the pressure came, it's impossible for quarterbacks not to feel that. And that's when mistakes happen. So it's all about getting pressure up front. That Washington offensive line is going to have their hands as full as they've had all season. But this Cinderella run, you just keep doubting them, and they just keep pulling a rabbit out of their hat.
Yeah, they're 5-0 as underdogs. They're 5-0 outright as underdogs. And they probably should have lost to Arizona State as well. Michael Penix had a terrible football game. So, yeah, and I'm an LSU fan, obviously, and I hate this, this narrative now coming out that because Michael Penix is playing great on the biggest stage, he should have been, considered more for the Heisman. And the fact is and the argument that nobody watched Washington games goes in the same breath. Nobody watched the Washington games, and they also didn't see, like you said, the Washington State game, the Arizona State game. Jane Daniels had one game like that, and it was against Florida State, the very first game. Florida State was before they lost Jordan Travis was a national championship contender. Nobody was confusing Arizona State and Washington State with, let alone a New Year's Six, So
Yeah,
that is one thing that's very annoying to me. But
it's
with
annoying.
that being,
It's annoying because people haven't watched him, and I've watched
No.
Washington every single week, and I can tell you the last time that Michael Penix threw for more than 2 touchdowns in a game, and it's not going to be when you think. November 4th against Stanford was the last time Michael. Now, he had an amazing game against Oregon, and he threw 2 touchdowns, amazing game against Texas, and he threw 2 touchdowns, but he hasn't thrown for 3 touchdowns in a game since Stanford on November 4th. So people talking about the Heisman, listen, we talk about recency bias in all these awards in the MVP race and stuff like that. If Brock Purdy was performing like he did in the middle of the season, at the end of the season, and Lamar Jackson, like vice versa, Brock Purdy would win the MVP award. That's how these awards are won. He wasn't playing his best football at the end of the season. The stats weren't even close. We can have that argument another day when this whole thing is done. Right now, I need the Huskies to win. My wallet needs the Huskies to win. I am not going to hedge. You heard it here first. There will be no hedging. Washington Huskies are getting the job done. The Cinderella story is complete. Another thing that I've heard is comparing him to 2019 LSU. Obviously, they're not as good as 2019 LSU. Anyone who thinks that is crazy. But they're built very similarly with those 3 wide receivers, with that 3-headed monster, and with a quarterback that can absolutely spin it. Is Michael Penix Joe Burrow? No, but he can spin it, and he's clutch, He has got that clutch gene, and they've beaten plenty of ranked teams, been in plenty of big games. Another aspect, and we talked about it last week with Michigan and Alabama. I want to hear what your thoughts. Michigan now got over that hump, that SEC hump. They could never beat it. Is there any sense of, now we got Washington? Is there a sigh of relief? Because Washington hasn't gotten respected all year. They're getting disrespected again going into this game. Nobody believes in them. They've relished this underdog role. And it's just, I think it's helped them each and every week. It's heads down, get a victory, move on to the next game. They're at the last stage. They got the final boss. Is there a sigh of relief in Michigan just for getting over that initial hump that's plagued them for the last 5 years?
See, I think that everybody's money is telling you about Washington, but I don't think anyone's really doubting Washington. I think everybody, 49 states in America, want Washington to win this football game. And Michigan's going to use that because of the whole cheating scandal. You heard JJ McCarthy after the game. They're still, ringing that bell that, everybody's against us. So I do not think that Michigan's going to have that kind of let down their shoulders moment, because I still think that they're, throwing rat poison in the locker room of like, everybody hates you. Everybody thinks you guys are losers, cheaters. You're cheaters. So I do not think that. I actually think that they're going to, the line came out 4.5 or 5 points. And I thought that was a lot because, this looks like a 1-score game to me all day long, whoever gets the ball last, similar to both semifinals games. But now that I'm thinking about it, Michigan may dog walk them.
I've always said the Cinderella story could come crashing down. And when it does come crashing down, I don't think it comes crashing down by 3 points. I think if this is a 3-point game, I like Michael Penix. But if this is a 3-score game, Michigan could easily come out there and do that. And like you said, how about the McCarthy comments, though? You mentioned them. Like,
wild.
Why are you talking? What? Could you just shut up for one more week? I think that
Michigan's PR team has been on overdrive this season. Overdrive.
And how could you possibly say that ahead of the biggest game of your season? Say it after the season. You want to say it after the season? Nobody's going to care what kind of sanctions come after the season. Most of you guys are gone. Even if they stripped your national title away, nobody would care. We would all still consider you national champions. But coming out and saying it before the biggest game and saying, oh, everybody's cheated, so we just had to cheat as well. It was like, did he just say what I think he said? Crazy comments from the quarterback. And you just wonder, I don't know, maybe that's something.
They are public enemy number 1 up there in Ann Arbor. Jim Harbaugh came out and said JJ McCarthy's the greatest quarterback in history, and then he corrected himself. He was like Michigan history, and he is probably, especially if they win a national championship. And then, they've got all these cheating scandals, and everybody hates Michigan, man. And Jim Harbaugh is so dislikable.
And Washington on the other end is so likable.
Sweetheart.
Yeah, they're just little puppies. Like, they have a puppy as a mascot. Like, come on, get us a dub. Michael Penix, take us to the promised land. Take us to the promised land, man. Coming up after the break, the Falcons had 2 players named to the Pro Bowl. Do you think anybody was snubbed?